Right. So I think we can kick things off. It's about 3 minutes past, which is when I usually start these webinars. Um, so yes, hello and welcome. Your speakers for today, as mentioned, are myself, Charlotte. I'm the head of marketing here at StoryStream. I'll be talking you through kind of where we are in the industry in terms of the attention economy, the content gap that we're seeing between brands and what customers want, why this matters, and then some of our solutions and some really cool live examples from brands that we're working with. And then there's a wonderful fireside chat between Cameron and Tom. So I'll let Cam and Tom introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cameron. I'm the COO slash CCO. I look after all of our customers at StoryStream. I think LinkedIn told me I've been here 8 years, or it might be coming up this week, next week, which is very exciting. And we've actually been working with Sainsbury's for about 5 or 6 of those years. And I've known Tom for probably 3 or 4 or so of those. So very happy to have a customer coming and talking with us today about some of the features that they're using. Over to you, Tom.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Tom Cusack, Group Consumer Generated Content, manager at Sainsbury's. So that covers both the food part of the business, but also general merchandise, so Argos and Habitat, and also our clothing brand. So yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks for the invite, and look forward to the session.
Awesome. Thanks both. So a quick overview of the agenda today so you know what you're getting yourselves in for. So as mentioned, we're going to cover, why the topic of scaling UGC matters right now. We're going to touch on the attention economy, the state of things as they are right now, and the content gap that we're seeing here at StoryStream. Then we're going to touch on this cool new solution from StoryStream called Content Briefs, and some amazing live examples from brands like Tommy Tippy, before coming on to the great conversation between Cam and Tom. And then we'll have a brief wrap up. So I think today it's really important that we discuss this fundamental shift in how brands need to communicate, and why, the old content playbook might be slightly broken, and how you can build, a new scalable engine for authentic marketing using UGC. So we now live.
Charlotte, just also to mention, if people do have questions, I think the Q&A tab is the place to put them, and we'll pick those up at the end. Is that right?
Yes, perfect. So why now? So to understand why UGC is so critical, I think we need to really look at the new reality that we're operating in. And we call this the attention economy. So, currently we have a world of infinite information. Human attention has become the scarcest and most valuable commodity. And platforms like TikTok, they're not just competing for your marketing budget, they're actually fighting a daily war for your customers' eyeballs. So where is your customer attention going? So it's going to social media. Obviously, you might have guessed that. And people are spending an average of 147 minutes a day on social platforms. They're there because they're being inspired, they're being entertained, they're discovering new things. It's an immersive content-first experience that they love. I'm sure you love. So let's compare that to the average time people are then spending when they go to an e-commerce site, which is on average around 2 to 3 minutes. Now, this is a huge difference in time and engagement, which highlights what we call the content gap. So on one side, you have the dynamic and engaging, discovery-driven world of social media. And on the other, you have this transactional, static, often uninspiring product page. So this is causing a huge issue for brands. So this is one of our favorite slides. Social has cracked the attention code, and it's rewired our brains. So as you can see, social has completely cracked it. People are hooked. They're spending over 2.5 hours per day scrolling, swiping, watching, and they're not on traditional brand websites. So the result of this is the 8-second consumer. So there's a constant battle for this attention, which has literally rewired your customers. The average human attention span has fallen to just 8 seconds, which has created a consumer who is conditioned to expect a constant stream of short and engaging, and most importantly, human content, such as, user-generated content, videos, short form, maybe it's testimonials about products and things that they love and they are looking at. So they've been trained now to value this authenticity and this novelty above everything else. So it's changed the way we engage with content. We want endless content. We want stuff that's authentic. And, on social, it's algorithmic driven. So it's giving us stuff that we actually want to see. And ultimately, this has now created a once in a generation shift in how we shop online and how we discover products. We don't just want to go to a website and, see a very plain image of a product, because we've come to know and love, the immersive, engaging video and peer generated content that we get on social. And what this means is social has ultimately replaced the high street. Websites have become the new shop window. And our recent survey found that actually 66% of people said they were going to social media to discover new products. Now, this massively increases to 83% when you ask Gen Z, which is staggering figures. So what do we call this? We call this the experience gap. This is something, we're seeing all these changes happen and it's led to a massive disconnect. A customer is scrolling through their world, the TikTok video you can see there, and which is dynamic, it's peer driven, and it's an experience they love. And then they'll click on a link, which will take them through to your website. And suddenly the energy can die. They've gone from this immersive party to a silent library. And this we call the experience gap. So this is a big problem. So 80% of people have abandoned a purchase after being redirected to an e-commerce site from social. And again, this massively rises to 86% when you look at it from a Gen Z perspective. There's this desire for authentic and immersive and infinite content that doesn't just stop at social. People crave these same dopamine hit experiences when they get to your website. This is the social to e-commerce gap. So really, what this is saying is customers are hooked on social. We know that they're spending 147 minutes on average a day on there. And why is that? Because on there, they're getting inspiration, they're getting discovery, they're getting real life, real people, which, I love it, and I'm sure you will do too. So how does this translate? Well, not very well. Often people go to an e-commerce site and they feel lost. And as you can see by this person, disappointed. So, and the reason this gap is so damaging as well is that brands often assume that visitors are on their site to buy. Lots of websites were built this way, but the reality is 97% of first-time visitors are in discovery mode. They're there to be inspired and convinced. And a static page with some corporate photos might not inspire them. It only really informs them. So then when they aren't immediately engaged, they bounce and they go right back to the world that does engage them, which is social. And so we start again. So, this entire problem is rooted in what we call the content gap. So it's the chasm between where there's sheer volume of authentic, real-world content that your customers now expect and what your brand's internal teams can possibly create. You cannot simply produce enough content to keep up when at their fingertips they are getting this endless stream of content. Doing so is too slow, it's expensive, and it often lacks the raw authenticity that you know, you need to engage with the modern day consumer. However, you know, how do you fill this content gap? Well, we'd say you stop trying to do it all yourself. The reality is there's a whole like world out there of people who are bridging this gap for you. You know, your customers are creating content for your brand, user-generated content, which is one of the single most powerful ways to fill your marketing channels with this authentic and trusted and engaging content, which you might not be able to create at scale on your own. So you don't need to create more. We'd say you need to curate more. So what's the impact of using this UGC, user-generated content? Well, the reality of this is 90% of people are seeking UGC before they make a purchase decision. So surfacing that on your website has so much power already. And 84% of Gen Z are more likely to trust and buy from a fashion brand that actively shares user-generated content from real customers. So this really is your bridge to getting that trust and getting that loyalty from customers. So how do you do this? You bring this UGC into experiences that people love on social onto your website. And what this means is that ultimately your customers are going to continue discovering and being inspired. And what happens then? Well, if you're inspired and you've discovered products that you love, you're more likely going to buy them. And the results speak for themselves. Really, you're transforming shopper engagement, and this is transforming conversion as well. Our story streams stats show that by integrating UGC into your website, you can increase dwell times by plus 30%, see average conversion go up 18%, and bounce rate drop 25%. But don't worry, you don't have to do this all on your own. As StoryStream is the AI-powered platform for UGC and visual discovery. So through our platform, brands can source UGC either directly in the platform through hashtags or app mentions, or directly from your customers or employees or brand advocates using StoryStream's content briefs, a solution that we'll come to talk about a bit later on in the session. But through content briefs, you can specify the types of content you want from your community through fully customizable web forms. Then all within the platform, you can enrich this UGC content by integrating with your product catalog and making all the content shoppable. Or for instance, you could add call to actions. So you could add a book a test drive or book an appointment in store, all onto this engaging UGC that people are scrolling through on your site. You can also manage all that UGC in one place. So you can build streams, you can showcase your high quality content, you could showcase seasonal content, all in automated streams as well. And then in the platform, you can transform this UGC into website modules, or as we like to call them, experiences. So whether that's for your homepage, your PDP pages, or your category pages, or more. So we have a lovely solution called Inspiration Galleries, which is just like an endless stream of user-generated or influencer or employee content in one place, which is all fully shoppable. So I go on Office's website and I end up adding about 3 pairs of trainers to my basket because I've ended up in this inspiration gallery and I just want all of the trainers that I see. But again, in our platform, you can then analyze the performance of these experiences with our patented AI Aura, who can give you insights on content performance and suggest content that might perform well as well. So this is all done through the platform. And now I'm going to hand over to Cam to deep dive into the different types of community content.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, so I think Charlotte's done a great job of explaining the why. And I think obviously we've got a mixture on the webinar of some of our customers, both auto and e-commerce, that already use us, and some people that don't use us or don't use us yet. So I think hopefully the last slide just explains a little bit around what our product or platform does. We often have discussions over what does user-generated content mean, and we're trying in some cases to actually broaden that definition to talk more about community content, because we think actually there are many areas where you can collect content. This is often the steps we go through when we're onboarding customers, etc. Obviously, the brand social content they're producing, often some great reels, authentic video, that can actually be reused on the site. You've got influencers or brand ambassadors, and we have ways of either whitelisting what they're putting on social or potentially using content briefs to be more defining. Right, from our brand ambassadors, we're launching this new product next month. We really want to see you creating pictures of that in this setting so that we can use those on our site at launch, etc. Or employees, again, if you're in auto, a lot of your employees are given these cars to use and whatever. Why not expand the way that they're telling stories about these new cars? Or your store associates, in some cases, some of our customers like John Lewis use their stylists a lot for producing and creating content. And then I think many of our customers have started with essentially what is step 5, which is putting through our platform, putting in hashtags, mentions, etc. on Instagram, Facebook, etc. But we are encouraging everyone also to think more about the direct contribution of content, because there are ways you can direct it. There are also people that are actually active in your community and want to contribute content, but might not have public social handles, etc. So we are working with a lot of our customers to say, actually, we should expand the number of areas where we think we can get content from, and also find ways where we can make that as easy and automated as possible. So as a result of that, we have launched recently, if you can pick to the next slide, our content briefs. So essentially, it's a product that allows you to specify and define the type of content you want from your community through a customizable web form landing page that you can create within the StoryStream platform. And so you might be using a number of different content briefs, one for your employees, a different one potentially for store associates, a different one for your brand ambassadors, or one that you might be pushing out to your consumers, either through social, through your website, or indeed through a post-purchase email link. And we'll talk about that use case a little bit more. Example, in fact, a couple of different ones here. We've got, this was the Taycan experience in the US. So where they were using customer proof about how much people love their new electric cars, how fast they were, how it's still a sports car, to persuade other people to overcome their concerns about what electric was like, etc. And again, these were longer form stories. But what we were doing was seeding with certain examples, and then going out to those buyers via email, via social, via web, and asking them to submit stories. We've got thousands of stories, which is now being expanded beyond just the electric Taycan across to all of their different models, etc. So just to briefly explain how it works, and again, if you want more details, talk to your customer success manager if you're a customer, or talk to us afterwards. So in the platform, where in the place where you can also create the experiences, you can create a content brief. So you can say, this is what I want to be asking people to create. In the middle is an example of that on mobile. So you're saying, we've got some inspiration of the types of content that we want. And then the forms where you can say, I want them to upload this, I want them to answer these questions, tell them what car they have, tell us what product they bought from us, etc. And we can customize that. And obviously the terms and conditions are included. So when they are submitting content, they are agreeing to the terms of either that competition or the fact that they're giving you right to use their content there. And then again, you can send a follow-up, and that may include entry into a competition, or it could potentially include vouchers, etc. So that's how that works. And if you have access to that, you can create multiple content briefs within the platform and then utilize them in your channels. And if we go on to the next slide, I've just got a couple more examples. On the left, this was probably one of my favorite ones that Skoda did. So their Draw de France if you can see in the small screen that on Strava, people were creating their cycling routes in order to create artwork from that and then submitting that to Skoda to win that. And so 1,600 people that went through the effort of creating that cycling route on Strava in order to enter. And interestingly, some of those Skoda customers were people that Skoda didn't know about. So actually, it also helped them get new data about those customers, which car they owned, how long they'd owned it, etc., that they previously hadn't had. In the middle, we all know how passionate new parents are about the products that they're using. In this case, Tommy Tippy. And again, as part of their anniversary, they were looking to collect content around how those products had helped them through those early stages of childhood, babies, etc. And then on the right, very recent, exciting one around the Euros. So again, got over 900 stories of people about why they loved their VW, not necessarily a new one in this case. This included older VWs, older models, but again, just driving that sense of community. In this case, obviously, there was a nice incentive to try to win VIP tickets to the Euros. So those are some of the examples of some of our customers. We're going to come on in a second, obviously, to how Tom at Sainsbury's has been using it, but hopefully gives you a flavor of what the product is and how it opens up, and just try to think about the fact of how this can be used in multiple channels to help with your overall content strategy. And with that, we are going to come on to Tom, who's been waiting patiently in the wings. Welcome, Tom. I think to start off with, it would be brilliant if you could just maybe explain a little bit more. It's great to have a title which is all about consumer-generated content or user-generated content. So why is authentic content important to Sainsbury's, and I guess why have they invested in you and your team to really build out this capability?
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose that's real evidence there how highly Sainsbury's as a business kind of regards social content, social proofing. So yeah, there are a team of 4 or 5 of us, both onshore and over in Accenture in India, who support, and that is testament, I suppose, to all of the different types of UGC that we see, or consumer generated content. So I know we'll obviously focus on the visual element today, but we also look after product reviews. We've got customer Q&A that also sit alongside that, and I think it's really compelling. We're kind of pulling all of those stories together, making sure this is a kind of full funnel execution. And we're trying to drive our visual content sit alongside that. I think to add to that, there is also some recent UK legislation, so the DMCCA, Digital Markets Consumer and Competitions Act, and that is all around fake reviews. But I think it goes a step further and actually looks at all forms of content that customers kind of create, and ensures that retailers or brands aren't sort of repurposing that and making it misleading for customers. So that authenticity, social proof is kind of the cornerstone of customer trust, as well as being an incredibly strong sort of conversion driver for us across our e-commerce channels and beyond.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And is there, you mentioned obviously you're covering not just Sainsbury's for food, but also Habitat too, and Argos. Does it play different roles in the different brands, or how does UGC play a role in your wider content and marketing strategy?
Yeah, so broadly, we do have the same solutions available across each of our websites, each of our apps, but actually that strategy does differ between each of those brands. So, for instance, we're live on the homepage with StoryStream content on our Sainsbury's grocery program. We aren't yet there from an Argos perspective, but on the flip side, we are actually there from a PDP perspective. So if you look at those differently, customers from a food perspective are more likely to add to their basket from a lister page level. So the PDP becomes slightly less important. We see far fewer visits to that page. On the reverse, Argos, you're more likely to hit a PDP. So actually ensuring that we've got a full execution, we've got visual content, we've got product reviews, user-generated content, social proof is absolutely critical. So yeah, there are absolutely differences there, a few differences in terms of maturity. But ultimately, our aim here is to make sure that this is a hygiene factor. Visual content actually becomes really commonplace. It should be or it is fast becoming a customer expectation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And were there any specific challenges that you had been facing when you're sourcing UGC that you've been trying to overcome?
Yeah, so if we were to look back at that kind of community page that you just pulled up a second ago, I think there's real opportunity for us to ensure that we are covering each of those touch points, because today we're heavily reliant on the organic side of things, and that's put us in a really good stead. So customers are freely sharing their content. But actually, there's some real opportunities for us to go above and beyond. So we are now asking for employee content, for instance, from our Sainsbury's colleagues. We aren't yet for Argos, so there's an opportunity in that space. So yeah, I think it's just making sure that actually the scaling of that opportunity, that we are asking customers, we are asking colleagues, and consistently, which we are aiming to do over the next few weeks and months with the tooling that's available.
Brilliant. And Charlotte, could you go back to, I think it was the next slide after our
Sorry. Yeah.
bios. And I think, Tom, this was interesting. I talked earlier about sending an email post-purchase to consumers to then ask for content. I'd love you to talk through how you've been doing that using content briefs, and also maybe touch on how you see the request for a review differently to the request for inspirational visual content. Would be brilliant to hear from your point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a standardized platform across each of our brands whereby we're contacting customers post-purchase, asking for a product review. What's new is actually this. So content brief with our food execution currently. We're looking to fast follow and roll this out across the rest of our domains. But this is really specific. This is giving customers the opportunity to, as we're calling it, be our homepage hero. So we're asking them to upload their content. We're being fairly specific in terms of some of the examples we're showing there. But if I take me, straw poll of one, as an example, I'm not someone that's going to go and share content across my personal Instagram profile, for instance. Whereas this is a really nice way for me to direct upload. It's very clear what's being asked of me. And actually, it's completely, I suppose, disconnected. There's no connection with my personal profile. So, as a user, I think you're more willing to share some of that content that you wouldn't necessarily put on your profiles. If we take Argos as an example, how many people are going to upload photos of, I don't know, a new television, for instance, or home and garden furniture? Whereas actually, what we do see from a direct upload perspective, when we're able to be quite deliberate in terms of what we're asking, that's where the opportunity lies to scale that content.
And Tom, in our view, one of the key things is if you show people, right, we'd like you to upload your pictures, but typically if you do that alongside reviews, you get a picture of the product on the floor, it's focused on the size, or it worked or it didn't work, etc. Whereas if you give them these types of inspirational images, and in your case, you've said, if you give us a great image, you can be our homepage hero, you tend to get the same type of content as you would expect to see on social, because someone is trying to make them and the product look good and be inspirational. So I think it's key. The way you ask will define the type of content that you get back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the beauty of the content brief, where again you can be super pointed and targeted in terms of some of the content you are asking from your customers, from your employees, whoever it may be. So yeah, I suppose separate to this, we also have a version internally that we're asking our colleagues from a Sainsbury's perspective to upload their content. And again, there's opportunity for us to kind of finesse that, change the wording, ask deliberately what we're asking for our customers. But I would caveat that with the fact that this remains entirely authentic. So from if I go back to that DMCCA mention at the top of the call, there are guidelines in place. This is a very different proposition to that of reviews, but it's a great opportunity for advocates of our business to share content more freely, increase coverage, and then the knock-on effect of interaction and conversion from there.
Brilliant. And if you can, Charlotte, if you can just go on to the next one. So this is one of our favorite products around here. What do we call it? The chessboard trinket, etc.
We'll go with that.
This is more broadly, not specifically around content briefs, but around UGC. I'd love just to hear your story about this, Tom.
Yeah, so the trinket now on the right hand side there was actually sold out for a short period of time. And I think the real beauty of this example is actually we're not reliant on product reviews as a social proof form here. There are a couple, but they're kind of in the single digit numbers. Actually, what's been really compelling with this particular PDP on the right hand side is customers have been freely sharing organically across their social profiles. And actually, it's really brought that product to life. So there's a few examples that have been shown here, but you can see that product in situ, to Cameron's point. The photos we've got are quite dull, they're quite plain. There's some kind of cut out white background, but this brings it to life, gives you ideas. There's various use cases that people have got there. So they've got it on tables, they've got it on bedside tables, etc., etc. So I think that's the real beauty of sort of the nature of social content that's coming through from our customers.
So if any of you've got piles of keys or whatever at your front door, then there are a few. I think it was sold out, but there's a few more back in stock somewhere in your local Argos, etc. And Tom, I think you said you had a few sort of data points that you might be able to share or patterns that you could around the impact of having UGC on some of these different sites is having.
Yeah, so again, said at the top of the call, but there's two kind of benefits here that we're sort of, or purposes, I suppose, that we're aiming for. So the first is conversion driving, so ratings and reviews, social content, the visual element, but also that customer trust, which is a little more difficult to kind of quantify. But from a conversion driving perspective, and we've actually just got these kind of data sets, so super exciting to share internally. But we're seeing that customers who visit an Argos PDP, so much like you're seeing on screen there, interact with the content are converting more than 50% higher than customers that don't. So the next challenge for us is how do we ensure that we've got coverage across more products, because there is opportunity for us to scale there, but also ensure that this content is a prominent type within our product page. There's obviously it's real estate, so there's going to be some challenges internally, but now turning up to those conversations to say this is the value that this form of data, this form of content, sorry, is bringing to the table is a super compelling thing to have from a business case perspective. So we also see across some of the other core metrics, so ads trolley, average order value, revenue per visit, that they are positively trending. And there's some validation to do across the rest of the group, but yeah, early days are super compelling numbers.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Tom, for showing that. And we see similar patterns, not always that amazing, that impressive. That's an amazing uplift of 50%, but we're generally seeing the same patterns of significant uplift in engagement and conversion when people interact with this content. And so, as you said, the next challenge is, with some of our customers, we have up to 50% product coverage, with some that maybe have, product catalogs of more like 1,000 items, etc. When you've got, I can't remember if it's the figure in Argos, it's a pretty large catalog. Obviously, it's a challenge to go, how do we scale that? And I think there are a number of tactics, but one of them, as we say, is use content briefs to send out post-purchase, say, you've just bought this, we want more content. Or other people have a challenge of, I've got a new product, it's a new car, or it's a new launch of a new clothing item that's not yet in the market. I don't yet have UGC. We'll send a content brief to your brand ambassadors or employees or influencers that do have that. And indeed, in auto, they often have the life cycle of, I'm going to start with my brand social teaser, then I'm going to have some PR review content, then I'm going to have some employee or brand ambassador type content, then we'll start to see the UGC flow as that product comes into market. Obviously, slightly longer life cycles than a clothing item or a chessboard trinket. But always, if you think about, if you know the results are impactful, how quickly can StoryStream help you get from 5 or 10% product coverage to 50% or 100%? And I think content briefs is going to play a key part in that. I guess just sort of looking ahead, Tom, as you think about the role of authentic content and how that's going to evolve in Sainsbury's, or any advice you have to other brands that are saying, right, how should I do this more effectively? What would be your thoughts or advice on that? And then if people are, whilst Tom's giving you an answer to that, think of other questions that you may have and just pop them in the Q&A channel.
Yeah, good question. I think it probably goes back to that community phase page that we showed again, just a reference. So we've seen real success from 2 or 3 of those kind of streams, if you like. But actually, I think there's an opportunity for us to extend that, and it will work for some brands, and some sort of routes of content collection won't for others. So yeah, I think that's absolutely critical to make sure that we aren't reliant on organic content from a general merchandise and food perspective. We've seen the value from content briefs, we've seen the value from employees. How do we then go and embed that with our colleagues from a social perspective more broadly, because that actually sits outside of us. And then the other part for me is just ensuring that we're repurposing that in the right way. As I say, we do a pretty good job of collecting content. We're displaying that across some pretty key content places across our digital channels. But what is the future? Is there an opportunity for us to have that in store? Can we help customers wayfind? Can we potentially include that as an evergreen within some of our emails? So yeah, I again referenced this earlier in the call, but I think this is becoming a kind of a customer expectation as opposed to a nice to have. So yeah, I think it's one of those to get on the journey pretty quickly. Otherwise, you'll be left behind pretty soon.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Tom. One of the questions just come in, and I'll probably give it a go, and then I'll ask Tom to answer his view on it as well. So, thank you, Seal, for this question. Is what do we think about AI generated content? And I think interestingly, we are working with AI a lot. We're working with AI from the point of view of helping match UGC content to what the product is. We're also using AI to also visualize and give content insights, etc. But we also start to play with, well, what's it like when you're generating content with AI? And it obviously is becoming increasingly effective. I think the balance in terms of it's easier to do and it looks, it looks okay. I think the balance is that if the consumer knows that it's Gen AI, but it's telling a story for a particular reason, I think it's okay. But it's not authentic if you're trying to portray that as real content. And so when someone wants social proof, and you'll see in our experiences, there's generally an actual name, or in some cases, if it's from social, you can have a link back to that social profile. They're saying, well, is this a real person that's saying this about this product? And then I would trust it more than if it's just a computer generated image, or maybe it was an original image that's been adjusted by AI, which is potentially a halfway house that is more acceptable. But I think it's important to badge that against this is a real person. And I think we'll see the social networks trying to be more proficient about saying, oh, this is a real profile or this is an AI profile, because obviously, as you know, on a lot of the social networks, a lot of the profiles are fake AI profiles, which is fine, but I think the consumers need to know that. So rather long answer from me. Tom, your thoughts? Have you been playing around with generating different variants of product images with AI or?
Yeah, I think I've probably got exactly the same view, so not a huge amount to add. Not totally relevant to the visual side of things, but I think it may be a bit of a correlation from a written review perspective. You can very easily tell which has been created using AI and which has been used, kind of crafted by a customer direct. And I suppose if we can try and get to see that difference from a visual perspective, that's going to be key. And it goes back to Cameron's point. If you can have a look at a customer's profile, that's then I suppose proof that they are a human. So yeah, I'm hesitant around the kind of AI generated content. Authenticity absolutely paramount to what we do. So I think it's one to stick close to. But yeah, there aren't answers on that one just yet.
Excellent. Charlotte,
Right.
other questions?
Yes, so I do have a question around how easy have you found setting up content briefs and perhaps customizing it for different campaigns?
Yes, very easy is the answer. So I mentioned we are live on the Sainsbury's grocery post interaction email. We are also live from an employee perspective. So we actually run a sampling program where we hand out products to a number of colleagues in return for written reviews. But as part of that, we're now pushing the visual user generated content with that. Real success story. We are looking to imminently, as I mentioned earlier, roll that out across the rest of our brands. So there's opportunity for us to be super descriptive over what kind of content we're after from our customers, to the point that Cameron made earlier, showcasing examples that they can follow so they have some sort of inspiration or idea of what we are after, but ultimately not leading them too specifically. So actually that authenticity does remain. But yeah, very easy to get content briefs up and running, very easy for us to amend them. So we've got an incentive, for instance, that's running on ours. That's super quick for us to go in and change with the team. So yeah, all positive from our side.
And I think from our customers' point of view, for some of the customers on it, obviously, if you want your CSM to help you with that in the initial case, we can. But obviously, the aim is to then put that into your hands or the hands of your team so that you can create these quickly and, without having to wait for us to do anything, etc.
Awesome. So we have 2 minutes left. So I think unless anyone has any final questions, we will have to call it there. So thank you very much, Tom. That was really insightful. And I am dying to get my hands on one of those trinkets and one of those vases. Yeah, they look so good. And I've been thinking of all the different ways I could use them. Um, so yeah, so I wanted to just do a little recap on our key takeaways. So some key stats for you to take with you. That 90% of people are seeking UGC before making a purchase decision. And I think, from hearing Tom's experience working with UGC and seeing those bits of social proof under the vase and the trinket, you can really see why people are seeking UGC, because it helps them to visualize the product that's on offer in their space, in their world, and give them ideas for, where they could put it, how they could wear it. So I think that's really powerful. And another one that's a key takeaway is that 97% of people who land on your site are in that discover mode. They're perhaps not ready to buy yet. They want to be inspired. They want you to kind of give them some ideas of what they might cook tonight if you're on the Sainsbury's site. I know I've done that on the Sainsbury's gallery, particularly around Halloween. I was looking at Sainsbury's UGC gallery for inspiration on what I could bake to take into the office. There were some lovely graveyard cupcakes that someone had baked, and it was up on Sainsbury's UGC gallery. So this is a really key stat I'd like you to take away with you. And then just to recap on content briefs. So it's what Sainsbury's are using to gather that UGC from their customers and also their employees. And it's really helping brands to get this authentic content at scale. And just to take away the power of social proof. So the impact Sainsbury's have seen, I think it was 50% uplift in conversion from your dashboard, Tom. Correct me if I'm wrong. They are seeing firsthand the impact of this, and it's very powerful. So thank you very much. And thank you so much to Tom for joining us today from Sainsbury's. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, and we continue to do so at StoryStream. But today you've been really great on the webinar. And if you are interested in anything we've talked about today and you're an existing customer, then please reach out to your customer success manager. And if you're new here and you've loved what you've seen or want to learn a bit more, then please reach out to Cameron, who was on the call speaking with you today. His email is on screen, and we will share some details afterwards if you would like to reach out. So thank you very much, everyone, and we will stop it there.